Everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I'm delighted to be talking with author, creator Joel Meadows. Joel, thank you for joining.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And happy 5th of November, or just slightly thereafter to you.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm a teacher, and it was an interesting election week to
Yeah, yes, I've
read
I've been
some.
following it myself as well. So it has been, as you say, quite an interesting week.
Yeah, reading Hobbes and Locke and a lot of those foundational thinkers this past week.
Yes.
So folks out there will know you for work in spaces like the Dread magazine, Tripwire, and you've been involved in comics journalism. You
Yes.
also have work in the world of Sherlock Holmes that we're currently talking about today.
Yes, that's right. So I've had quite an interesting CV. I've done a lot of very different things over the years. And Tripwire started as a fanzine back in 1992, and then we've developed it. We stopped the print magazine for a little while, and we switched to the web, and then we went back to print in 2020, and we've gone back to that. So we do three print issues a year, as well as updating the website. So we have an interesting, a broad range of different projects that I work on.
That's awesome. I love authors with range. That's sort of the fixture. People that come on is that they've worked on a variety of things, and love the idea of uh, both being journalistic in your approach to comics as well as writing them and creating them. What drew
Yes.
you to comics in general?
Well, it was my brother's fault, you could say. When I was quite small, my brother was the comics reader. He was a Marvel reader, and he got me into comics. So I started picking up some of the comics that he read. I remember reading Howard the Duck as a kid, but I was more of a DC reader, so I read things like DC Comics Presents and Superman and Action Comics and Green Lantern, and that would have been about 1980 or 1981, so quite a few years ago. And then it's just sort of snowballed from there. We started the magazine in 1992, as I said, just as a very primitive fanzine because we wanted something out there because there wasn't much that was really that interesting
Mhm.
that covered the world of comics. So we thought there was a gap, and it started off. It was very, very primitive. I can send you a little bit later on some of our earlier covers because they're very, very basic. But as the years have progressed, we've got a lot more sophisticated. And I design the magazine myself now. I've done for the last few years, so it's been interesting to watch the evolution, the changes in the comic industry, um, in parallel with our changes and our evolution as well.
Well, speaking of creative evolution, um, how did you go from journalist to storyteller as a writer of comics?
Sherlock Holmes goes back about 20 years. In about 2002, 2003, I worked up a proposal for what became Sherlock Holmes and the Empire Builders. I found an artist who didn't quite work to begin with, but I was recommended to another artist, which is Andy Bennett, who's the artist I currently work with. And we pitched it out to a couple of publishers, but unfortunately they didn't bite. So I put it down, and then we have a regular feature on the website called Lost Tales, which my friend Scott Braden does. And we were just chatting, and he was saying, "Have you got anything comic related that we could talk about?" And I thought about Holmes again in 2018, and then doing the interview with him made me think that maybe there's something still there. So I reworked it up, and we did shorts. We did three short stories, which ran in the magazine, and they were very well received. So we thought, now's the time to jump in and do a longer story. So the current story is actually a two-part story. So the first part is in the first book, which came out in the very beginning of this year, and the second volume, which we're currently funding or about to begin funding Kickstarter this week, is the second volume of the story. So it's quite a big, epic initial first story.
Uh, and dealing with, of course, some classic characters, classic concepts. What's that been like to sort of bring your own take to the story in that way?
It has been fascinating. I mean, I've always liked Holmes. I remember seeing Young Sherlock Holmes many moons ago, which is about, the youthful Sherlock Holmes coming into contact with Moriarty for the first time, and things like Jeremy Brett's Return of Sherlock Holmes. I've always enjoyed even the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes. I thought was a decent stab. So, but this is kind of Holmes as people have never seen him before because it's almost like a steampunk story because basically Watson leaves his employ and he goes to unravel the DNA helix with Watson, and then Oswald Mosley becomes prime minister and he creates sort of an army of sort of super soldiers, and so Holmes is forced to basically battle against sort of the government of this alternate version of England. So it's a very broad, epic story. So it's taking Doyle's, initial concepts, but taking them in a very different direction. I mean, a little bit like Batman, I guess, if we're talking comics here. The nice thing about Sherlock Holmes is he's an iconic character, but there's a lot of scope for writers and creators to do very different stories with him and with his cast of characters.
Yeah. What is the process like for you of writing and creating? Are there particular steps that you always follow?
Well, I mean, I normally plot the thing first. So I've come up with the overall plot for this story. And then once I'm happy with the plot, I write DC style. So I do write panel breakdowns and I do captions
Mhm.
for the artist. But I'm a bit flexible. If Andy says there's something that works better, it's like in the first issue, first volume, we've got this. It's a page with like four porthole images. There's an assassin with a gun, and I had to draw out this very basic. It was effectively like a sketch page I created, and I gave it to Andy, and then he turned it into a really wonderful page. And we do, we work well together, even though Andy's American. He's actually got weirdly quite a British sensibility as an artist, I think, and because we worked together for a few years now, I think we get on well with each other. I'm always making sure to keep in the loop, obviously, with everything that's going on, and I think we collaborate really well. So it is. So I'm currently about 30 pages into the script for the second volume, but I have the plot already, and I've been sending him through pages, and he sent me He sent me 6 pages so far of the second book. So yeah, I mean, it's a reasonably organic process, but I do like plotting things, and I like working DC style. I mean, as I said, they're not like Alan Moore scripts. I don't write 4 pages for every panel, but I try and offer a little bit of guidance for Andy and a little bit of reference, and because there are things like there's a particular motorbike in the first book, and certain guns, and just certain things, places. I try and get in reference for that because I quite like because that puts it in a real context in terms of the setting.
If you were able to travel back and talk to a just starting you in terms of writing and or journalism, any advice that you would give to a younger you?
Well, I guess you have to be adaptable and you have to be flexible, and you have to be open to new ideas. And also, it is a very in terms of the comic side of things, it is very collaborative and it's very exciting. I mean, we've been getting in our pin-ups and we got in the 2 covers for the second book, and I didn't give them much art direction. I wanted to see what they came up with. So I think be prepared to be, pleasantly surprised by what people create for you if you're working with them. And then journalism, again, you have to be adaptable. Sometimes you arrange interviews and for whatever reason, they don't necessarily come through to come up with a backup plan, to create like a feature rather than an interview. So just, I guess, being flexible. That's probably a good bit of advice.
Absolutely. Well, I think I have one more official question, and that
Yes, of course.
is, where can people go to learn more? Where can they support? And any details about funding the book that you'd like to share?
Well, there is. I don't remember the URL, but if people go to Kickstarter and search for Sherlock Holmes and the Empire Builders, Volume 2, it's currently on pre-launch. So we're going to launch it officially on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. We're trying to build up more followers for that. But there's a preview of the cover. We got very exciting. We've got brand new covers from Dan Panosian and Fraser Irving. We've got pin-ups from George Pratt. Tom Coker about to get a brand new Barry Kitson piece. John K. Snyder the third. A pretty amazing lineup. I mean, the first book we had Walt Simonson and Mark Chiarello create covers. I mean, the other thing is, if people miss the first book, we're offering it as a paperback for the first time, and we're also offering a second printing of the hardcover of the first book. So if people want to catch up, then we're giving them the option of doing that. Some people might be happy just to look at the recap in the second book, but if they want the first book, then it is going to be available again. So Kickstarter. But no, it's very exciting. It's really coming together nicely. The second book.
Well, it certainly sounds like it, and glad that you're out supporting comics, writing about comics, and creating
Always,
them
yes.
too.
It's important what we do. It's part of what we do. I'm off to Thought Bubble next week. We're launching this face to face, which is a book of my comic creative photos. So I'm doing a talk at this place called Destination Venus on Friday. So if anyone's at Thought Bubble in Harrogate in Yorkshire next Friday, in the evening, and they're free. It's a free evening, so anyone's welcome to come along. And there'll be an exhibition of 15 of my photographs. People like Alan Moore, Guillermo del Toro, Jock, Kieran Gillen, a whole range. Posey Simmons, Mary Talbot, Brian Talbot, a real range of people. because I do a bit of photography as well. So you're talking about, different skills. I enjoy the fact that I do a lot of different things, and I enjoy the photography as well, which feeds into my journalism. So,
Absolutely. Any sort of most interesting or surprising interview you've done with someone in the world of comics or comics adjacent media?
I mean, I got to interview Matt Groening and David Cohen years ago when Futurama, when I think it was the first or the second time it had come back in sort of mid 2000s, and they were amazing. I got to do an Adam West interview at a round table for one of the animated Batman things that he did the voices for, and he was incredible. He was incredibly funny and friendly, and because some press round tables people aren't really that keen on actually being there, but he was amazing. So I've been lucky. I've got to meet and interview a lot of interesting people, and most of them have got a lot of interesting things to say.
Well, Joel, I'm glad to share about your. This is an open invitation, so anytime you'd like to come back to
Thank
talk
you so
about,
much. It's always been my pleasure to come back. I'm very proud of Holmes. It's taken a long time, but I think I'm very proud of it. I think we're going to have two phenomenal books, and we're making plans hopefully for like a third volume as well, which will be a brand new story, sort of separate from the first two. But I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the work that myself and Andy, and I have to say that he's a phenomenal artist, and the way that he brings my scripts to life, it would be a fraction of what it is in terms of its power as a story without his sizable contributions. I have to say that because I think I think it's fair. I think he's a very talented artist. So I'm very lucky that we got to connect, 20 odd years ago and 20 plus years now, when we're working together on a regular basis, which is very, very exciting.
yeah, what I've seen of the pages and what you've shared with me looks amazing, and
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that there's more coming as
I
well
mean, I
that
mean,
you're
actually, I
planning.
got an amazing quote through from Guillermo del Toro the last week. He called it a darn good romp, which I'm very, very, I'm very flattered. I mean, we've got all these amazing quotes from people, so it's really connected with the audience and with people, who are fans of genre, which I'm very, very pleased about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, many thanks,
Thank you
and
again for having me on.
yeah, safe travels to Thought Bubble, and
Indeed, thank you.
glad to share about your work.
Perfect.